20-somethings. Georgia and Emma team up to create a podcast. In Have You Tried Yoga?
My favorite yoga.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Welcome to My Favorite Yoga
The
podcast,
mini-sode
where we talk about your stories.
of being true crime victims with chronic pain.
I think we've got our wires crossed.
What?
I think we're confused.
Are we not a true crime podcast?
I think I've been doing too much thesis.
Oh, okay.
I need to lay off the thesis. It's a hard drug, man.
So what do we do here?
We talk about chronic pain and disability, apparently.
Okay. All right. Well, if we must,
Occur.
I mean, like, there's gonna have to be some murder or some bad stuff happening in this episode, or I don't really know if I can continue.
Oh, there will be bad things happening.
Oh, okay.
To animals.
Dogs?
No, turtles.
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 All right.
Turtles.
Am I not turtle enough for your turtle club?
The reason why I made the thesis reference is that I am 3 weeks away from submitting my honours thesis.
3 weeks.
3 weeks! So my brain is scrambled. Emma is in the last weeks of her term teaching little schooly kids.
That was a sentence.
It was a sentence. So
Yeah, that's what life is for me though. Plus I get 2 weeks off to kind of plan and have a holiday, so that's not as bad as 3 weeks till thesis.
But still, we are existing. Well, I'm existing, so
A friend just messaged me saying, "Do you love me even with my plastic straw?"
of course,
And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about
the final straw.
it's the last straw. It's the straw that broke the camel's back.
You know, like the final
No
straw.
Yeah.
Can we put that on an outro?
You singing the final straw.
The actual
The
song.
final countdown.
But only short enough that we don't get copyrighted.
no,
infringement.
do you know what I think it should be? It should be like the final, and that's you going, straw.
If you've got the time, do it.
I really do have the time. And all of my outros are short enough that it's copyright. You do realise we've been putting songs at the end of every episode?
I know, but I'll
Do you
just...
listen that long?
I do, but I'm saying that so the viewers know. The
Okay.
people at home know that you can't sue
We're
us.
viewing our podcast with their eyes. The listeners.
Puck you, miss!
Oh my god.
Alright.
Jonah.
Alright, so why are we talking about straws? It's hot and trendy, it's hashtagging.
Hashtag straw no more. So you might have heard that a lot of places around the world have been banning straws, in particular plastic straws, ditching them for an alternative or ditching them overall.
Yeah.
There's a pretty big campaign in Australia. It's started by a 10-year-old girl named Molly, and it's hashtag straw no more. She seems lovely. And so today we're going to talk about like being environmentally friendly and this whole straw ban and the impact of it on people with disabilities, which has not been covered by the media.
It's
And
been entirely neglected.
I would say it's covered by like disability friendly media.
Yes.
And we are going to be talking to one writer and advocate, Alice Wong, who you may have heard of, who wrote for The Eater about the straw ban and how it affects people with disabilities. So let's like take a bit of a trip down history lane.
Let's
history
take a
lane?
Let's take a
Memory
journey.
lane. Yeah.
Let's take a journey. Where are we going, Emma?
We're going to 1888, and that's when straws in their modern form started. And they were created for people and for use with and by people with disabilities. You know, back in the time when everyone who was disabled got put in an institution, and it was a really sad life. So Marvin Chester Stone, he made paper and wax straws because it was cheap, durable, and, you know, it had to do what it needed to do to administer not only medicines but drinks.
Yeah.
And, you know, they've started off with paper and wax, and as most thing goes, you know, we're past the Industrial Revolution stage, but, you know, basically once plastic was seen as it's something cheaper, it's more flexible, everything has gone to plastic. For example, in Australia, well, in Queensland, there's been huge social upheaval and uproar about plastic bags in shopping centres being banned. So, like, any shop, you can't get a plastic bag to put your stuff in anymore.
Well, correction. You can, but it's a reusable plastic bag. So
it's only an 80%.
So it's a thicker plastic bag that you should be able to reuse again. And some of the major supermarkets are making their reusable plastic bags that you have to pay for out of recyclable plastics.
But, like, the Coles one, for instance, is only, like, 80% biodegradable, which is, like, what is the point of you?
Yes, and unfortunately, people are having a go at retailers, people behind the counter who haven't made this decision, because they don't understand that, yeah, Emma's got a good point. It's not fixing the problem. However, the idea is it drives consumer behaviour, where people get to the point that they're sick of paying for plastic bags, so they bring their own canvas ones or whatever ones from home. Like, I've seen people encourage bringing, you know, laundry baskets and putting your groceries into a laundry basket, or a nice, you know, straw basket, or you might have one of those old-timey stretchy bags with the holes that you put fruit and stuff in.
Like a little netting
Like
bag.
a little netting bag.
And that's what I was getting at. So, like, you know, not 10 years ago, what am I saying? You know, like back in the 40s and 50s, when you did your grocery shopping, you didn't have plastic as a choice. Plastic was really reserved and only started being used, say, in jewellery in the 1940s. Look at my retro knowledge. But, so you didn't even have those as an option. Same with straws, okay? For the longest time, they were just paper or wax.
Yep.
But then as plastic became, you know, a big mover and shaker, we started having plastic straws. And obviously, plastic is super bad for the environment. It can take, you know, upwards of 100 years to degrade.
Well, we actually put thousands of tons of plastic into our oceans every year.
Well, there's like that really gross plastic island that's like the garbage island that's now just like become a soup because it started to melt.
Yep, so
Really
what
messed up.
happens with plastics when they degrade is that they don't necessarily degrade in a way that's actually good for the environment. You get something called microplastics. Now, microplastics are I did some reading, as you can tell, today. Microplastics are little facets of a plastic item, be a plastic bag, maybe, let's go with that. The first layer wears away due to UV rays breaking down the structure of the plastic.
Oh my gosh, you like got scientific.
I
on this.
did. And these
going.
little tiny microscopic pieces of plastic then go into our soil, our oceans, our ocean floors. Fish eat it, you know. Animals that drink the water eat it. And then we eat it because of our produce eating it. So what it means is over time, not only are animal bodies getting filled with tiny particles of plastic, so are humans. And we don't know the health ramifications of this. And one of the major concerns about it is that these microplastics seem to be encourage like a magnetic effect where bad chemicals are absorbed by these microplastics. So we don't actually know what this is going to do to our bodies long term. So not only, you know, is it bad because our landfill is filled, but what happens is when we litter or when we don't properly dispose of plastics, they end up in our waterways, which then goes into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we all know the cycle of life of, you know, it eats a plant, we eat it because it's a fish, you know, rah-de-rah. So fishy. So it's kind of important to remember that we are very unaware of what this is actually going to mean long term, because plastics in the history of the world are very new.
Definitely.
I mean, Emma was talking about the 40s. That really wasn't that long ago.
Nope. So this straw ban though is new, but in terms of it, I do wonder what it's like around the world. But in terms of Australia, like in Queensland in particular, we've just had this plastic bag ban, and there's been since last year there's been a really successful TV show on the ABC, which is kind of like, you know, the public non-profit channel, called War on Waste, and it had a really big segment about Straw No More, and also about what happens to the plastic and how badly it affects the waterways. And so it can do other things, like it can affect animals, but it also simply means that it can ruin plant life, and it also can clog our waterways because it doesn't degrade quickly. So this straw ban is sort of it's really, really new and current and hashtag trendy. But the alternatives and the reasons for going for a straw ban are not new.
Yeah.
Stainless steel straws have been around for a while, but it was sort of like the culmination of a couple of things happening that have made it gone viral at the moment.
Yeah. Do you talk about the turtle video at all in this?
No. So do you want to talk about the turtle video?
Okay, so I was listening, I'll give it a prop. I was listening to a podcast called Science Versus, and it's based in America. And they were talking to a lady who does research with sea turtles and other marine life. And she had spent many years, like other researchers, in looking at ocean conservation, finding plastics everywhere. Her main mission was to show these animals at their best, to encourage positive associations with turtles and whatnot. However, she finally lost the final straw happened quite literally to her when she found a sea turtle in the ocean that was quite unwell. Now, being a researcher, she decided to record it for, note-taking kind of purposes.
Australian?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Because War on Waste showed the video of, I think, what you're about to tell me.
From her accent, I'm not sure where she's from.
Okay.
But they got this turtle aboard the boat, and they found it had something in its nose. And at first, it was assumed it was a barnacle. But once they got some tweezers and started gently pulling on the thing in the turtle's nose, they realised it wasn't a barnacle. So what they did is they trimmed it and then they analysed it quickly with their eyes. And one researcher very bravely chewed on it, which is gross, but good on them, I guess, for science. And as they kept removing the thing in the turtle's nose, and the turtle was quite literally crying and its nose is bleeding profusely, they realised that this turtle has inhaled an entire plastic straw into its airway. For God knows how long this turtle has been swimming around with a straw up its nose.
And if you ever accidentally gotten something up your nose or even water up your nose, you know how much like that hurts? Can you imagine like a turtle having like, so painful?
Or even people who are fed by tube, that is not a comfortable feeling.
Mm.
And a marine animal doesn't understand what's happening. So this lady got sick of it, so she posted this video and it went viral. And
have you seen the video?
I have, and I'm still not over it.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
It's really awful. I don't recommend it at all. My summary is quite enough.
Yeah. War on Waste actually showed this other turtle who, I think it was a plastic bag, had like gotten under its shell, and it meant that it could not swim out in the ocean anymore because it would not be able to stay under the water properly.
Yeah.
So
it would float because the plastic bag would collect air. Jesus Christ.
It was really messed up.
The problem with all these stories, though, is that from what I've understood from my very brief research today, straws form like maybe 5%, if that, of the plastic pollution in the ocean.
So that brings us to why the straw ban has taken off. And that's because, like we said, 10-year-old Molly, who I believe she went on a holiday and saw this happening to turtles and then was so passionate that she started a hashtag Straw No More. But then also this environmental group called Lonely Whale. They started a marketing campaign that was used with celebrities with the tagline, stop sucking. My notes say get sucking, but it was actually stop sucking. Like, stop sucking. You suck.
Get sucking.
Yeah, which is just like, well, it's just like, no, because that's the opposite of what they wanted people to do. But, yeah, so basically it was seen as a gateway plastic, as experts describe it.
Ugh.
It was a gateway plastic to engage the public on a larger conversation about waste and plastic. So, not everyone is... What's an example of plastic? Like, not everyone is... I suppose it's like an easy throwaway plastic item.
Yes.
It's not like...
And if you come from an abled body perspective, it's something that is seen as superfluous or not needed. It's a social item to them.
Well, and when you go out for, like, drinks, you'll get a little straw in your drink often.
Yes.
If you're a woman, if we have to gender it.
Well, yes, unfortunately.
Because it's like, oh, you don't want to ruin your lipstick, or you that's what people think it is. Or it could simply be that you don't want to gulp a giant drink down. So, like, that's where they decided to use that as opposed to something that people use all the time. Like, that's why plastic bags have created such an uproar, because people cannot handle that they have to think about bringing bags with them when they go shopping. And I totally get this because I have a canvas bag in my handbag that I take to work every day. If I go out on the weekend and I don't have a big handbag, I don't have a canvas bag with me, and then I end up like carrying like my fruit and veggies in my hands, which is irritating, but like not the end of the world.
To be honest, it's going to get to the point that the city we live in, Brisbane, which has banned plastic bags, everybody will just keep a foldable canvas bag in their handbag or
and you
coat
can get
or
like
pocket.
those they go really
Keychain.
small. Yeah.
They go on your keychain, and I always keep a folded one in my handbag, not to be like all la-di-da, but you know, if you don't drive, it's a bit more of a painful thing because you have to carry it around.
Yeah.
Like, it's all fair and good to be to people, just keep the bags in your boot, but what if you can't drive, you know? So for me, I just keep a folded one in my handbag as well as some in my car.
Yeah.
It's just a habit. It's just a habit. Whereas I don't believe that banning straws is the same as that.
I think for a lot of people, I think the difference here is that everybody, whether you're disabled or able-bodied, you use plastic bags in your shopping, or at least you did until this ban. But not everybody has to use a straw, and that's
No.
where the privilege comes in.
Absolutely.
So, Alice Wong, who we're going to be interviewing later on in the episode, she wrote an article where she mentioned that one person's social prop is another person's conduit for nutrition, which I think sums that up really nicely. But June Ives, is that how I'm going to pronounce that person's name? Sorry, June Ives, executive director of the Lonely Whale Foundation.
It is now.
Said that it was the perfect social prop and conversation starter. So obviously this Lonely Whale Foundation, like, they want people to be environmentally friendly, and they've got a really good message behind it. Perhaps the marketing tactic, we still have to be a bit cynical about the fact that it is actually a marketing tactic, and they were using it, you know, they actually made a move to help people become more environmentally friendly in a way that was researched and targeted, like you would assume it would be. But, you know, we like to think that this just like happened because everyone awoke one day and was like, I want to be eco-friendly.
But in doing that campaign, they've marginalised a whole group of people without realising it.
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about straws today.
There was a really good episode of NPR that I was listening to where a guest, Dr. Truelove...
Is that their real name?
Yeah, I know, right? It is.
That's so romantic.
I know. And they're not a love doctor, sadly. They're an
They
associate.
should be.
Under
They
the-
should do this psychology of love instead of just this.
Yeah, I would check. That's a hard last name to have. So they're a professor of psychology, an associate professor. And she said that, you know, this like social conduit, this social prop, that something like plastic in oceans, you know, like it's, you know, it's like the starving child in Africa. Like, that's not the big issue. But if you have that teeny tiny child with those big eyes looking very malnutrited, like,
It's an eye-catching stimuli.
yeah, and also it means that it's something small that people can do that eventually makes a difference. So she said, Dr. Truelove said, you refuse a straw and suddenly you're kind of identifying yourself as an environmentalist. Like, yeah, I'm part of the solution. And I am totally fall victim to this because I've started to try and become more eco-friendly, and I've made really small steps. And I felt so good about these small steps. So I've bought Who Gives a Crap toilet paper.
Yes!
So
That's on my list.
So it's toilet paper that uses recycled materials, and then it donates toilet paper to people in
And it's
developing
not
countries.
wrapped in plastic.
It's not wrapped in plastic, it's wrapped in paper. And you get like a big box of it. So actually an advantage for me there was that I didn't need to rush out and buy toilet paper.
And it gets posted to your house. You don't have to carry it home.
Yeah. And then I've also been reusing jars and putting like tea and stuff in jars.
I do that
As a
It's
way
awesome,
to...
hey.
Yeah, so I've only just started doing that.
I personally won't buy bottles of things. I'll buy cans because aluminium cans, while they're very expensive to produce for the environment and financially, they can be reused. So I try and buy canned drinks rather than bottles.
Yeah.
Milk has been a challenge though. We go through a lot of milk here, and while I recycle and
Well,
separate
where do you even get glass bottled milk anymore?
You can't,
You'd have
and-
to go to a co-op.
And it's the same thing if you are out and about and you're not smart enough to bring a bottle of water, which I often am not.
Oh, see, I'm good at that.
You can't get canned water, and someone needs to start canned water. Come on.
Well, there is that brand that does like that glass bottle and it's got weird white writing on it.
Voss.
Voss.
But it has a plastic lid.
Oh, does it?
Mm-hmm.
See, I am good at carrying a permanent water bottle. Permanent water bottle? Sure.
Reusable water bottle.
Reusable water bottle.
I haven't bought takeaway coffee in a disposable cup for over a year now. I use Keep Cups, and yes, my Keep Cups are plastic, but they're getting reused, trust me, and they get used so much. Emma and I were having a candid chat before we recorded, and we realised, for me, my weakness is cosmetics. That is where I've never been able to reduce my plastic
But
use.
it's very hard to be environmentally friendly with cosmetics. There are some better vegan products coming out, but they often don't have the same colour or consistency that you want from... So the best thing you can do is buy ones that are not tested on animals and lipsticks that don't contain lead, because guess what? Lipsticks still contain lead, even though we're always told that that's something that happened in the 50s.
I guess also being mindful about what cosmetics you buy, like rather than just grabbing a whole bunch, like buy a palette with multiple colours rather than lots of individual palettes, so it's less plastic, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's lots of thinking, which a lot of us don't have the time for.
Yeah, and don't have the privilege. Like, I think
Oh, exactly.
choosing to be... I think if you choose to be environmentally friendly, I think it kind of falls into a few different categories, but either... You're in a rural place and you already do a lot of these. You automatically compost because you live on a farm. So there's that kind of level. But if you're,
City slicker.
Yeah, if you're an person living in an urban environment like we are and you're choosing to be environmentally friendly, that takes a certain level of income. It takes a certain level of planning that a lot of people with disabilities don't have time for.
And I admit myself, coming from a relatively privileged background, I have the money that if I want to buy the more expensive washing powder that comes in a cardboard box instead of a plastic bottle, I can.
Ooh, I've been reading interesting things about these things called soap berries. Have you heard of them? Yeah,
So cool. But, I've even had a conversation with my partner who I live with about, if we can buy something that's packaged in paper instead of plastic, let's do it.
Yeah.
But that's a very mindful thing to do. And quite honestly, most of the time, if it doesn't have plastic, it's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very prohibitive against lots of marginalised people.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going on a massive tangent. We're here to talk about straws.
Yes, but it's all kind of part of the same conversation. So let's chat about why plastic straws are needed and if there are any alternatives to a plastic straw that can be used for people with disabilities or ways that they could cut down on being. Because the idea that it's just like black and white and it's like, oh, people with disabilities don't want to be eco-friendly. Like,
not true.
I'm sure people that need straws would really like to, but there are so many barriers because we don't have products that are reusable. Even the notion of being reusable is really hard. So let's go through kind of the down low on straws.
Yep. So the problem with reusable straws is that they can be hard to maintain and sterilize, and they may not be safe to use. While compostable products? Compost things that you can put in the compost and they will break down. They can dissolve in hot liquids and present as a choking hazard
Can
and
you
allergen
imagine that
hazard.
someone's like, here, this is a safe straw to use, and then it like freaking melts in your mouth?
No. So, it's always going to be a good idea for restaurants and coffee shops to keep plastic straws on hand for disabled people.
Oh, I guess we should say for the uninitiated, why do some people with disabilities need straws?
Because they need them to take a drink. Because they struggle with either holding a cup to their mouth. They either struggle with, swallowing or... there's lots of reasons. You may have a tic.
But that might be like the main two. It's either, you can't move the cup to your face in a way that's effectively, or, it's something to do with the swallowing.
Yeah. And, saying to these people that your needs to eat and drink and take medications are less important than banning straws is just kind of horrible.
Yeah, and I think what's really left out is that there's been no discussion in the mainstream. It's been like, oh, but if you have a disability, it's okay. And it's like, well, why don't we actually is there a way that we could make better biodegradable straws that are still plastic? Because, like we said, the reusable stuff it can be really hard for people because they might not have the energy or the ability to actually clean the straws
Yeah.
between use. So it's like, oh, just have a pack of reusable straws that you rotate. Like, that's a lot of planning for someone to do.
Well, and if you are not able to care for yourself, that's another thing to expect, you know, your team to do. And sometimes
Yeah.
they're barely able to look after your needs as is, you know. And the other thing is,
What if your carer forgot to pack
your
a
straw.
straw that day, and
Yeah,
then you're
you
left...
can't drink.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you know, straws are very small cylindrical objects. It's quite hard to properly sterilize them, and that acts as a risk for consuming bacteria and disease and people who are already not very well.
Well, I mean, doesn't everyone have a sterilization kit in their handbag?
No! It's hard enough for me to keep my keep cup clean. I mean, come
I know,
on.
like, it's just a bit ridiculous. So, and yeah, like we said, asking people to bring their own straws, to wash and clean straws, and to purchase different straws, it makes more barriers for them having access to the community. You know, it's sort of like, do you remember that tweet where it was like, well, disabled people, you know, shouldn't be out after 8 p.m.
Yeah.
We're not werewolves, Daniel. It's sort of like this idea that it's like, well, you know, why would a disabled person need, you know, why can't, they wouldn't be going to a club. I think the idea, no one's said this, but I think the implicit idea is that it's like, you're not visualizing a person. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just intensely watching you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You don't see somebody with an issue consuming liquids without a straw at a club, and that's problematic
Well,
enough.
I guess, yeah. Basically, yeah. You've just said what I meant to say, hey.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, you're not picturing that someone with a disability will be out at a club.
God
'Cause
forbid
you
they
don't-
leave their house.
Yeah, exactly. You think we're werewolves and that we just shit. We just sit inside our
What happens is we don't go to social events and want a drink.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the ignorance and the assumption that someone with a disability who needs a straw should not be included in an area that straws are banned, like
But it's like,
restaurants and cafes and events.
What if you had to then worry, say, okay, imagine, you know, we've all, like, they've actually put a straw ban in. Imagine this being, like, a thing that, like, government legislated. And then someone had to bring their stainless steel straw that kind of hurt their mouth, but they would use it anyways.
Yeah.
And then they forget it one day, and they're so worried, and they feel like, I have to leave this party early because I didn't
because
bring
I'm
my
going to
reusable
dehydrate
straw.
otherwise.
Or I have to demote myself and make people help feed me. Like, you want to be able to be independent.
And the issue is the alternatives that people are assuming disabled people should swap to actually aren't necessarily alternatives. And there's some really good reasons why we can't just assume that someone can swap out from plastic, you know. As we said, the ones that are made out of plant plastics can break down,
Dissolve in your mouth.
and dissolve in your mouth, and so can paper ones. Glass ones can break and cut people
Same with stainless steel. I don't know if you've ever put a stainless steel item in your mouth.
and smack the roof of your mouth. If you have
Yeah.
a tick, that's very dangerous.
So Sarah Packwood, an activist on Twitter, made a really good graphic, and I'll share it in the show notes, about why these reusable options often won't work for people. So if you look at metal, for instance, there's an injury risk. It's not positionable.
It doesn't bend,
Yeah.
which is what's great
And,
about plastic ones.
You know, they do say that the metal or stainless steel ones, like we're talking about, you can get ones that are actually, they have one bend in them,
Yeah, but
they
that's-
can't bend back the other way.
And the other thing is if you have it in your mouth and you have a tick and you smack it against the roof of your mouth, that's awful.
Or you could chip your teeth on it. Like, and I think it assumes that people with disabilities only have one way of their mouth being positioned. You're assuming a lot about the way
Yes.
people consume.
And it's dangerous if it's high temperatures because it's hot. Metal
Yeah.
can burn you.
Yeah, someone brought my mum a really lovely glass teapot, but the lid was still glass, and I was like, this was
Stupid.
a design flaw.
And, you know, you see people putting things like pasta straws out, but that's not useful for people who are celiac.
Wait, what's a pasta?
Pasta straw, it's literally just a tube of pasta that you use as a straw.
I
And
don't want my Coke tasting like pasta.
well, even that, you know, if you're celiac or it degrades or it snaps, that's an injury risk anyway.
Okay, if you ever had... Okay, so I don't know if this is just an Italian or my weird household thing, but often when you, like, snap some spaghetti, say, like, you might just, like, eat a few pieces before you cook it.
I've done that.
Yeah. Have you ever like accidentally
It
been
hurts.
poked? It hurts so much. It is so sharp.
And things like bamboo aren't positionable either, and they're really expensive.
And there's actually a whole thing about how like bamboo is actually not as you've got to be really careful with bamboo.
It's not actually good for the environment because it uses a heck ton of water, right?
Well, not only that, but it basically the demand for it is so high that they are actually clearing forests and planting bamboo forests now
Ugh.
because people aren't obtaining it sustainably.
Yeah, and while
So-
people like to be nostalgic and talk about the good old days where we use paper straws, you can choke on those because they break down and gag and struggle to breathe, or God forbid you inhale a piece of paper straw and it gets into your lungs. That can cause a chest infection.
And you're like, if you've ever had like a too hot coffee cup when it's not like a disposable one, same thing with a straw. You can't have a nice, hot chocolate that you're drinking through a straw because it's going to be hot. It's conducting heat.
Yeah.
And they've mentioned acrylic ones, which makes me think of like my acrylic brooches.
Yeah,
like
right?
a really pretty, really like glittery acrylic straw. Like it's
But
the same
isn't-
deal. It's hard and it's sharp.
But isn't acrylic just as bad for the environment as plastic?
Yeah, acrylic is a form of plastic.
Yeah, so...
Let me talk to you some other time about how I'm trying to make my brooches more eco-friendly.
okay.
Yeah, it takes like not hundreds of years, but it takes at least like 80 years
And
to
like,
break
there's
down.
reusable plastic ones, but they're not bendy enough. And as we said before, they're really hard to sanitize properly. And reusing some forms of plastic is actually really bad for your health because it leaches into the item.
Yeah. I feel like we just like smashed out that graphic by Sarah Packwood is like
It's
the most.
fabulous.
It's so good. So I think obviously we do need to make better options and
Yeah.
more eco-friendly options. So one disability rights activist, Michaela Hollywood, spoke to ABC News, and it's not that I have an ABC, I guess, bias, but
Okay.
they just happen to have really good disability articles.
Here's the thing. In Australia, the big media refuse to be they refuse to be disability friendly pretty much. They just don't talk about disability
It's
in a positive
it's
way.
not on anyone's radar. It's
They-
like, on The
Ugh.
Voice where like, the TV show, the singing TV
She's
show
an
The Voice.
inspiration because she
She's
has
in a wheelchair.
She's a wheelchair and she can sing.
And it's like,
That's-
being in a wheelchair doesn't stop you from being able to sing.
Anyway, so ABC and SBS are two channels in Australian media that actually are disability friendly and aren't necessarily funded from companies doing advertising. They actually get government funding, so they're less biased. So that's why we always talk about
Yeah,
them.
less biased. Not totally without bias, but
Oh
less
god,
biased.
no, less biased.
But anyways, they interviewed Michaela Hollywood from Muscular Dystrophy UK about it, and she said, as a disabled person, I'm deeply concerned about the environment, and there's no doubt that our society needs to change our ways and reduce or eliminate single-use plastic from our lives. And she said, some steps that she has taken as a disabled woman is, I've bought a reusable, durable plastic cup.
Which
but-
was expensive. They are expensive.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's one way that you could help your drinking is that even if you are using plastic straws, bringing some kind of keep cup or reusable cup with you.
Or you can get some, if you are able to hold a cup to your mouth, but it's just the spill of the rim, you can get like a sippy kind of nipple thing that you can drink from.
Please say sippy nipple thing.
Sippy nipple thing.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't have an issue positioning a cup to your mouth is a great alternative, but that assumes that everybody will be covered by that, and that's just not the case.
No, not at all.
And she's saying here that a lot of her peers have been unable to find alternatives that they can use. And as we said before, there's a lot of problems with environmentally straws.
Yeah.
And there is no one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely. There are some, for example, we posted this on Instagram to see what everyone else thought. And one member talked about how she actually has a little silicone, I guess you could say nipple again, or a little silicone bit at the top that she can put on a glass straw that for her, with her disability,
Makes it friendly.
yeah, makes it friendly, but it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all
Absolutely
solution.
not.
I think, unfortunately, that a lot of things that are disability-focused actually don't look at the environment, and I think a lot of people who are disabled want to be helping
Absolutely.
combat environmental issues as much as possible. I think we need more disabled people actually making these products instead of people going, here's what is best for you, because throughout history that has not been the case.
No.
If you want to learn more about disability and chronic pain in history, check out our episode on that.
I think for me, the biggest issue with this whole campaign to ban straws, it's confounding the image of a able-bodied, wasteful person who goes out on the weekend and has some cocktails or a glass of Coke and goes through 10 straws that night because she gets a fresh straw for every drink she has.
Oh my god.
Pretty much.
Straws.
And, this is the same lady or man, but I'm going to go with lady because that's who uses straws in modern media,
Or
unfortunately.
people who go beyond the gender binary.
Yes, straws are feminine. Unfortunately, it's just the case. So I'm going to go with that stereotype. Please don't kill me. We see a woman. She goes through 10 drinks. Like, I have people in my family who are guilty of this. They want a straw for every glass they get because, God forbid, they put their mouth on the glass. And it's just...
But you also put your drink somewhere else. It's not like no one ever thinks, I'm going to dance on the nightclub floor with my straw.
And what annoys me is that we're confounding this wasteful practice with people who need straws to survive. And that is
It's not wasteful.
No,
at
it is
all.
not wasteful.
For
It
them.
means that they can consume liquid or food or medication and it keeps them alive. And confounding these two cases is just marginalising an entire part of our community in a way that we have done time and time again. And it's triggering for a lot of people in the disabled community. I know there's a lot of people who are quite upset about all of this because they feel extremely marginalised and ignored and belittled. And some people feel like they're being treated like children because they need straws.
It'd be like, oh, but have you tried a stainless steel straw?
And it's like, yes, bitch, but it cut my mouth open. Like,
Yeah.
can we just respect what disabled people say they need? And, they want to be, a lot of us do. And I've seen a lot of these people who've commented on social media saying that, Ralphie, a lot of people have commented on social media, that they want to be disabled. That they want to be environmentally friendly, but they are disabled, and it means that sometimes they can't follow the stereotypical route to environmentally friendly, and we need to respect them and their needs. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not always a luxury to use a straw.
Welcome, Alice Wong. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You're a prolific disability rights activist. Can you tell us about the work you do and maybe a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. I don't know how prolific I am, but I just somebody splashing around the internet. My name is Alice Wong. I'm currently living in San Francisco, California. I was born and raised in the United States in the Midwest, which is a city called Indianapolis, which is very kind of a mid-range city. And my parents are Chinese immigrants. And I was born with a neuromuscular disability, so when I was younger, I could walk, and progressively I got weaker over time, so I quickly started using a wheelchair when I was about 7, and then just, throughout my life, it's just been a series of adaptations as, my body's changed, and I think, for a lot of people with disabilities, we're all kind of accidental activists, whether we really wanted to or not. The fact that we are disabled people living in an ableist world, whether we like it or not, we have to either, speak up for ourselves, but then we end up often, speaking up and, finding community. So that's who I am.
That's a great description, but I think you definitely are prolific. So could you tell us a little bit about your organisation that you sort of started and work for?
Yes. So about 4 years ago, I founded an organization called the Disability Visibility Project. And the Disability Visibility Project is a community partnership with the National Oral History Organization called StoryCorps. And we basically encourage people with disabilities to record their oral histories for StoryCorps. People all over the United States to use an app by StoryCorps. And what's kind of brilliant about it is that these stories will be archived at our Library of Congress.
That's so amazing.
It's really wonderful, and it's a really, I think, empowering way for people to tell their own stories and to really capture what's happening now to us. Because I think we think of history as something, happening centuries ago or decades ago. But, every day you and I are just, right now, we're creating history. And I really want us to really think about history as a dynamic activity that we can all take part in. We don't have to die and wait for historians to find this interesting. And I think, as we all know, that most of history is told by the victors or by, obviously, through a lens of privilege. And much of disability history, unfortunately, is told in those terms. So I really wanted to find a way for people to think about disability history and really take ownership of their own history. And also, we kind of expanded now. We're that kind of oral history projects, but we also are an online community that's dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture. And I do that mainly through my blog, through my podcast, and just, through Twitter chats. So, that social media has been a real game changer for a lot of us now who are just using these tools to share our work, to share our stories, and to really find one another.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I would love to talk to you about the oral stories for like 10 years because I'm a history nerd, and the idea that it's oral based instead of written is very fascinating. But then I would be here talking to you forever, and I don't want to go on a tangent.
That could be a whole other episode. We should save that for another episode.
Yeah, come back definitely. So let's talk about, you were saying how social media has changed things and how we can now, as people with disabilities, share our own stories. And you've done that in your recent article for The Eater, where you talked about the straw ban. So could you tell us, why is this straw ban that's viral at the moment, why is it bad for people with disabilities, or what's the impact?
The overall theme of the essay is that a lot of activism doesn't even think about, disabled people, the consequences or implications for disabled people. And much of the popularity, of the straw ban really was this idea of a gateway plastic, as an easy way to start a conversation about plastic pollution by environmentalists. And say, hey, this is really bad, it's wasteful. Here's an easy way that everybody can participate in to get rid of it. So the framing of this plastic as, wasteful and problematic really forgets the utility of plastic straws. And I think, it's been really clear when Starbucks really announced their ban on plastic straws that, they were a major company. And very soon after that, I think they and other, multinational corporations started doing that as well. The cities all over the world are banning various plastic utensils, plastic products, and I think what's been interesting is the conversation that disabled people have been having in online spaces that have been completely either dismissed, ignored, devalued, and oftentimes just attacked. People have said, why can't you use, a metal straw? You could use a paper straw, or why don't you just bring your own? And I think that kind of forgets that if disabled people have been saying they have many valid reasons why plastic is accessible for them. And I think that to me is what's really just so casually ableist about a lot of kinds of these kind of feel good environmental, campaigns that really just kind of forget that there's other people involved that are harmed. And,
Yeah,
and
don't
what-
even think it's on a lot of people's radars. I don't even think they realize that it's something that people need to use to survive and get nutrition from.
Mhm.
People don't even factor that in.
And the fact that, they so casually, easily say, oh, this is not going to impact you. As if like they know better than our own bodies, than our own experiences. I think that to me is so condescending that people have said, oh, people with disabilities are just overreacting, that, they're not going to be hurt, that there will be exceptions, and that, oh, don't you have a caregiver to help you, or can you buy some in bulk and bring it yourself? While kind of forgetting about the intersections of poverty and, disability, and just completely forgetting what disabled people are saying. And there have been so many people that I follow on Twitter, for example, that have been saying the same things again and again. And nobody just, really gives a damn. And there's so much free education given that's completely undervalued. And I think it just really shows with this issue just how ableist our society is. And just how it's just so easily overlooked. And I do think that this says a lot about kind of intersectionality and the way all different kinds of social justice activism can do better by including disabled people in their movements and in their organizations
Yeah,
and in their
definitely.
leadership. I think that's what's really missing. And
Yeah.
I
The
think,
only thing I've ever seen in regards to this straw ban is I've seen it actually seems to be better from environmental groups where they've said, try not to use plastic straws, but if you're a person, unless you're a person with a disability and you need one, but then we become an asterisk and we're not included. You're so right that it would be better if someone made a straw that was environmentally friendly that we could all use. That would be helpful too, but there's not one out there, it seems to be.
yeah, and I also think that also it's a matter of tactics as well. Who are the major polluters? Why are we going for the large producers and the larger, more difficult solutions, right? Rather than aiming on this individual kind of responsibility, which, again, I think opens up a lot of marginalized people to, judgment and stigma, with all this kind of backlash against plastic straws. People who use plastic straws in public have to often ask for one, after, it is like, in a lot of ways, it's setting us up to be, much more marginalized and much more stigmatized. And I think that to me is one of the more, dangerous, results. They're socially unacceptable. Therefore, people with disabilities in public spaces who happen to use them become de facto socially unacceptable. And I think we should trace this to laws, banning, disabled people in public. There's, laws like the United States called the ugly laws, many, many long time ago, where we were seen as so repulsive that we were not allowed to be in public. Well, I don't think it's that much of an exaggeration to see how straw bands are really another extension of that.
And I definitely think if you're someone who has the money and resources and option to then go and buy something like a stainless steel straw for you to carry everywhere or a bamboo straw, you've got so much more privilege than so many other people that can't even fathom making that choice. So it's worlds apart.
And I do really want people to, be mindful of their usage. I mean, we all are using, we all consume things that we rather not. And I think that's, we're all doing our part. And I think that, if people can't use, non-plastic alternatives, more power to them. This is not some sort of, not some sort of secret show for the plastic industry. Some of us don't have, choices. And I think that's a reality that we just need to understand and have some empathy for. Right now, for your listeners, they might hear that my voice is distorted because you see me wearing this mask. So I'm using a machine called a BiPAP, which is a ventilator, and guess what? I'm using a plastic tube and a plastic mask over my nose because it's the most hygienic, and there's no other, I don't think there's any other material that allows this machine to work. So, do I feel
You
guilty?
can wear a stainless steel breathing mask, right? That's something that can happen.
Right.
Can you imagine that?
So, there's a lot of things that I would love to use less of, but again, I'm not going to apologize for what I did. And I think
Yeah.
this is what's so damaging about me as things like this that are not thoughtful, that are very knee-jerk, where good legislation really doesn't bring together all of us. So I think this is where it really makes me feel like I can't really be my full self. And I think that's what's really unfortunate.
Yeah, we shouldn't be an afterthought. We should definitely be included more.
And we shouldn't have to defend ourselves in our
Yeah.
choices. And I think that's what's really weird, right? Like people with disabilities who have various, needs have to be subject to interrogation, by non-disabled people as if they know better about our bodies. I think that to me is one of the biggest, difficulties of the lived experience. I don't know, do you find that to be the case?
Definitely. There's a reason we called our podcast Have You Tried Yoga? It's because people give you really weird advice that you don't want or need. And I often think of it as like if something really silly, like, well, not that yoga is silly, but if something, simple like yoga or using a bamboo straw were possible and that would help me, why wouldn't I have gone for that option? It's because that option doesn't work for me. Like, I'm sure that if there was a way to have a environmentally friendly straw that was also comfortable and wasn't putting you in risk of danger, that people with disabilities would want to use them. Because like I think sometimes if you're a minority, often you can be more empathetic to other minority issues, and often that can be things like environmental activism. Not always the case, but I think for a lot of people with disabilities, they might have a better idea of how we're using the world and what's not great at the moment.
Absolutely. And there's so many different kinds of, disability experiences, but I do feel like, if there's one sort of generality, it's like this idea that others without disabilities do better. That there's always this sense of like doubt or this sense of like not being believed. And I think whether you have an invisible disability, non-apparent, whether you're neurodivergent, there's all kinds. But I feel like that's almost a running thread because it doesn't even matter what kind of disability you have, but this idea that you have this like difference. There's somehow you just don't know yourself.
And it's hard enough just to survive sometimes getting through the day than having to brace yourself for a fight. That's not something that people need to deal with and shouldn't have to deal with.
It's an incredible amount of emotional labor that we all try to go through in terms of just navigating public spaces, speaking up about ourselves, just, getting through our day. And I feel like, so much of that skill and that wisdom is really what makes us so kind of innovative and creative and savvy. And I feel like that kind of knowledge base is a unit of so much use that can be applied toward activism and other movements that were just not really valued that way.
No one's either like tapping into us or letting us have space to make those innovations happen as a generalization.
I mean, we are awesome problem solvers and awesome hackers, I think, just making do with what we have.
Yeah. So if for the people with disabilities or allies, what would you recommend that they do in regards to this straw ban?
Well,
So what action can we take?
Yeah, I would definitely, number one, like, encourage your friends not to judge other people who use plastic straws. That would be really great. Number two, I guess, if your city or town is considering a plastic straw ban, just consider writing a letter to your, to your elective representative saying, hey, have you talked to your local disability community? What's their stance on it? I heard that some disabled people really need plastic straws. What's your take on that? What are some ways that we can eliminate or reduce plastic pollution that won't harm vulnerable populations? I think asking those questions in public forums, whether it's at a community meeting or a city hall, or just even writing a letter, I think that's really great because you create a paper trail, you have documentation, and even just talking to your friends, just say, oh hey, so start a conversation about that because I think environmentalism is incredibly important. Climate change is real. We can all do something to make a difference, but we can also really be more flexible and inclusive. Like, there is no wrong way to be an environmentalist, whether I use fewer straws or whether I use other things to offset my consumption.
I think that's really important. Well, thank you for talking to us about the straw ban. Where can our listeners find you and the Disability Visibility Project?
Yeah, thank you so much. So first you go to my website to find out more about me. I'm at disabilityvisibilityproject.com. Anybody can email me at disabilityvisibilityproject@gmail.com. And I'm on Twitter at DISVisibility. So feel free to reach out.
Yes, and thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, Alice. It's been so awesome to talk to you about this issue.
I'm delighted, and thank you so much for having me.
I think we should do another episode about looking in particular how you can be disability friendly and eco-friendly. So if you have a disability or illness or pain issue that you can, I think it would be good to explore some options. And I think a lot of them are going to be expensive. Like, I would imagine that if someone has created an eco-friendly wheelchair, for instance, that it's so expensive.
Of course.
So I'm wondering, if we could do an episode on that, because that would be very cool. And I'm wondering if there are, I am a big fan of the Gateway eco-friendly manner. Like, I like, even though this spoon issue, like, I would be really interested in seeing how people with disabilities can do some tiny little changes rather than go out and buy all these new materials. So that would be really fun to look at.
Fun little outro.
So our favourite media publication, ABC Science, put out a fake news health generator for Wellness Week. So basically it's one of those little, like old teenage kind of...
Create a string sentence, fill in the gap thing.
And of course right now it's not loading.
So the idea is, you pick your date of birth, your eye colour, the year you're born or whatever, and then it gives you a fill in the gap word, and then you create a sentence.
Okay, so basically you have to say your eye colour, the first letter of your first name, your birth month, and the first letter of your last name. So have you done this?
I have, but I don't remember it. So my eye colour is blue.
Yep, so you're sleeping with.
Yep.
And then G is coconut oil.
So sleeping with coconut oil.
Your birth month is
June.
So sleeping with coconut oil around your neck, and then the first letter of your last name.
Young. Why?
So, sleeping with coconut oil around your neck helps you sleep.
False.
Fake
news.
Fake news.
What's yours, Emma?
Mine is that sprinkling amethyst. How do you say this gem, by the way?
Amethyst.
Amethyst? Okay.
I don't know.
I've never actually...
I just word salad it. Amethyst.
Yeah, when you, don't actually... You've never, read a word out loud because
yes!
you just read it? That's
Can I share something?
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I really liked the Twilight series.
Yeah.
And you know the character Carlisle?
Oh, no.
I had never said the word Carlisle. So when I read the entire series, I thought his name was, Carlily or something. Or
That's not that bad.
how do you spell Carl?
It's like
Carlilsey.
Yeah,
Carlilsey, I thought was his name. Because I was a wee bab and I never said Carlisle. But now that I know his name was Carlisle, I was like, that's much more suitable.
I've done that before with characters. I just can't remember at this present moment.
Anyway, what was your fake news?
Also, my fake news is that sprinkling amethyst in your sock
What?
reduces allergy symptoms. And I mean, did you know? Have you tried Amethyst?
Have you tried gems? Can we do Ralph's? What's Ralph's?
Ralph's. Alright, so Ralph's eye colour is
Brown.
dark brown or light brown?
Dark brown.
So rubbing
Yep.
the frequency of love. When's he born?
December.
Rubbing the frequency of love in your underwear. His last name is Young, helps you sleep.
Can you just say that sentence out aloud? So this is my dog Ralph's fake news.
Rubbing the frequency of love in your underwear helps you sleep. That is so dirty.
Is that really fake news though?
Yeah.
I don't think that's fake news. I think that's apt.
Yeah.
I
feel
think
like
that
that's-
helps.
Yeah. So go on to our Instagram, Have You Tried Yoga Podcast.
Can you guys please comment what yours is and we can all laugh together?
Oh yeah, so here are some of our other listeners.
Oh, yes.
Putting inspirational quotes around your neck makes you smarter.
Yes.
I feel like
Good. Fake news.
We've got sprinkling amethyst again. Around your neck fixes back pain.
Fake news.
Sprinkling turmeric in your underwear rebalances your hormones.
Fake news, but very Gwyneth Paltrow.
I said that I commented being like it's straight out of goop. Sleeping with raw eggs on your third eye cures sinus pain.
Fake news.
We've both had really bad sinus pain this year, so I think we
so
should give it a
bad.
go. And sleeping with garlic in your handbag cures acne.
Fake news.
Yeah. So that's hilarious, and I just want to keep doing it. I want to ask everyone in my life to do this little graphic because it's so funny. And it ties nicely into our next episode, which is going to be unsolicited medical advice.
2.0.
We pushed it back an episode, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We're also going to be talking a little bit about the show Afflicted. We have
Yeah.
many rants that we want to do about that.
Yes.
And we'll be giving you info on our merch brooches soon.
We will. And just on the business end, thank you for your patience with our patchy uploading lately. It's not all has been well in Thesis Land, and Emma has her own life too. But if you want to support the show, I have a few ways you can do that for us. Firstly, you can go on iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. You don't have to give us an in-depth review. You don't even have to say nice things. You can tell us what your favourite sandwich is. We don't mind. It's not about rubbing our ego. It's not about rubbing our ego. It's all about just getting us up that iTunes chart. You could tell us about your Spooning community about our podcast. You could post us on your social media. That would be great. You could write a review about this episode or any other episodes you like and post that onto the interwebs. Other than that, this has been episode something of Have You Tried Yoga podcast. I'm Georgia.
I'm Emma.
And goodbye.
Bye. Ralph, do you want a cookie?
Down.